Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Strive Summit podcast. My name is Alex Hanna. I'm your host. And today with me, I have Kirk Schroeder, professor at BYU Idaho. Kirk, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Like you said, Kirk Schroeder is my name. Been had it ever since I was born. So no, I have a long story, a journey within construction, and it evolved into BIM. And we will probably get into some of those details later. But I've been at BYU Idaho here for about 4 years now, in our VDC department. It's together with our construction management department. And I think it's the only one in the country, official one. I heard rumors of another one, but that's where I'm at. I love Idaho. I'm a family guy. And so got 5 boys, and they've some older ones. Two of them are actually in the BIM world, in reality capture or in the construction coordination stuff,
Awesome.
modeling. And so my young kids, they're just gamers.
So they're BIM guys in training. They don't just know it
Yeah,
yet.
pretty much. I don't think you can avoid it at this point.
So, Kirk, you're the first professor I've had on the podcast, and I think you have a very unique take when it comes to BIM because so far I've had tradespeople and people kind of fell into it, and you're the first person going to that higher education level of BIM. Some
Okay.
things that I've talked about before is like if you go into a trade for 4 years and you come out, you're instantly getting a job at any contractor or any company like that because you have trade knowledge. Like that's kind of stuff that you can't learn in college. And you can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but there are field experience and there is, college experience. Now,
Mhm.
in the college experience, you're going to get great coordinators. You're going to get great engineers, great problem solvers, great project managers, and also fantastic modelers because they're going to be in the program learning it the whole time. So there's a good
Right.
trade-off on what you're looking for when you're trying to recruit. What I want to ask you is what's some of the latest stuff you're seeing with your students that's really impressing you as they're going through your program?
The students, there's some pretty creative students that they're, again, we're in this industry where hopefully, I guess most of us are problem solvers, and that's what, helps us do well in the industry. And so I love that as I'm teaching in classes, I teach some BIM classes, but I also teach a surveying class, which we will take in reality capture and apply that in the surveying as well. And so the solutions they come up with is pretty exciting. And they kind of keep me on the straight and narrow. I kind of get crazy in technology and think, what if, what direction do you think, construction's going, and VDC and BIM, and sometimes they use those interchangeably. But
Mm-hmm.
and then I love to get the ideas of what's construction going to look like in 10, 20 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
And then we start talking about, the ideas, OSM, offsite manufacturing, robotics, AI, and all the prefabrication modularization of stuff. And I'm like, okay. And then the reality capture, are we going to take reality captured data and be able to somehow put intelligence to that as well? And how is that going to be automated? So they come up with some pretty cool ideas. I don't like to limit or say that's never going to happen, because 30 years ago when I started construction, that's like the standard number. I've been in this industry for 30 years, but I really have, and I took a whole different path. VDC didn't even exist.
Mm-hmm.
BIM, no one even heard of it. 3D just started, and so how it's evolved over the last 30 years, it's pretty amazing. Next 30 years is going to go even faster. But I'm excited a lot. We have classes around reality capture. We do 3D printing. How much more is 3D printing going to come to the
Mm-hmm.
forefront? In the VR side, the AR, mixed reality, all that stuff. We have classes on that, and then just the modeling portion of things on the MVP world, CSA side, and then coordination, of course. And
Mm-hmm.
I always tell the students, I'm like, we're like virtual superintendents. And if you can put that hat on and say, hey, if I tell the students, if you can't build it, you might as well not draw it. We're not artists. We kind of are, yeah, right? But we have to think, can you actually build what you're drawing? And so I always ask them, they'll say, hey, I have this certain scenario. And I'm like, can you build it? And I'm like, well, I don't know. Well, go ask someone if you can actually build that. Is it constructible? And so we get into those discussions, which is pretty exciting. And I want to have them shift their minds there instead of theory. It
Mm-hmm.
needs to be reality. So
Yeah, and I love that. There's a lot of people out there that do quote unquote coordination models and quote unquote um, digital twins and things like that. In reality, the only way you're getting a digital twin, and I'm gonna get so much hate probably in the comments for this,
Hmm.
is if you are 3D scanning the object, you are placing the exact materials in the exact spot based on the 3D scan, and then you go and do that every 5 years and keep it up to date. Because digital
Yeah.
twins are not a one-stop shop. This is it in time, and that's your digital twin at 2016. Well, what does it look like in
Mhm.
2024? Has it changed?
Yeah.
Has there been additions? Has an electrician come in and rerouted some conduit because it didn't work originally? Right. That's a digital twin. It's ongoing and it's exact. And I think that's a big part of some of the industry going on today is when you're modeling, just like you said, and I love the fact that you're training that, is can you build it? A lot of times I'll go through models, or when I was training some of the people where I was working how to model, it was look at the surrounding elements. You can
Hmm.
tuck pipe and conduit and MEPs against walls and up in ceilings and all that stuff, but can a guy's hands get in that spot and turn that lever? Can
Hmm.
someone go in like I worked in a modular factory? Can someone go in that space and connect those pieces, or are you just making it too tight? Does it look too
Hmm.
perfect on paper? So I love that you brought that up, Kirk. That's great. I
Yeah.
also like the fact that you're not limiting creativity. I mean, if we're talking BIM, we're talking 3D models, workflows are developing creativity. Just
Hmm.
workflows. Just how you go from point A to point B. Revit, for instance, has a plethora of tools, and they can all be used multiple different ways.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone has a perfect workflow. Like there's a semi quote unquote kind of like a standard you got to follow somewhat, but that's like all templates and stuff. If we're talking like modeling, there's so many different ways to model that, and
Yeah.
I think what you're doing is great at BYU. That's awesome.
Yeah. And that's another thing I add to the students when we're routing conduit or doing our piping models or plumbing and mechanical models. I say this is suggested routing. There's 1,000 ways to route the same system, and none's right or wrong. Some are a little easier to actually install, and that's what we want to get them to. But they have to. And when I grade the assignments and look at their models, I'm like, I'm not going to say are you within the dimensions that I gave you on the drawings, the 2D
Mm-hmm.
drawings. If it works, if the highways are in alignment, if they're supported, and if they're connected to the right points and use the right materials, then hey, it's good. And so you 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 know we I think people need to understand that there's no one right way to route something. We saw this in live, in reality, the pipe fitters, they got to fight with us BIM people, like, well, I've been doing this forever and they're very good at it. They're like some of the best modelers. If you get
Mm-hmm.
pipe fitters, train them as modeling, they're the best, in
Amazing.
my opinion,
Yep.
because we've trained them that way. And so, and they know as they model something, they look at it and they're thinking, how am I going to actually put this in? And so we brought them out of the field to teach them modeling. And so, and they have the same idea. I'm going to route it one day this way, another day a different way. It's depending on the scenario, and they're all right. And so, and the point that you made earlier is, can you access the install that you're modeling? I was totally surprised. I worked at a semiconductor facility for many years,
Mm-hmm.
and I was amazed at what those electricians and those pipe fitters could do. Holy cow, those racks that they have, and they're getting up there, and I'm like, how in the heck did you actually get that natural gas line in there? How did you make that field well? And they're crawling and supported with their harnesses on. I'm like, it's amazing what they can do. But what we would do in the field, this is kind of our journey, is when I learned BIM, is we would bring the guys from the field into the office and look at the models. And we'd say, okay, we're ready for you to do your first review, and we're going to fly each system and look at it. And you tell us where you want to put your welds. Tell us where can you access that point or not. Does it look good? And so we had this dual buy-in, the ownership to it, instead of just telling the pipe fitters, this is what you got to do. And then they're like going, well, I'll show you. You can't do that. Pretty much, they'll prove it to you that BIM
Yep.
does not work,
Yep. Yep.
right?
All
And
the time.
that happens,
Right.
and but you gotta work together with those people and value their expertise, and they'll
Yep.
make the modelers better, and you'll make them better.
I think what you explained is the downfall of construction in general. BIM, digital construction, and field guys, we got to figure out how to make them mix better. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
the communication is great. We got a lot of programs that are in field and not in field, but there's still a misconception of trade people and, BIM people and draft people. And I think the
Mm-hmm.
more we get trade people in the room drafting, the more trust you have with the trade and field people. And as that communication grows, like you're talking about, that them crawling in, finding and welding that gas line and stuff like that. Well, now BIM people have, quote unquote, the power to move that gas line where it's more accessible. And
Mm-hmm.
now your electrician is like, well, that's never going to work because it's always got to be that way. You've always hung by it. We'll just put it back where it was. Well, now you have another person coming in, the pipe fitter coming in and saying, nah, I hated climbing up there and I'm going to move that to the other side. And those guys in the field are going to thank me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the creative growth that I talked about earlier, is having the freedom to model the way you would in the field for fabrication, for pre-fit, for construction, everything. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's incredible. I love that you brought that up. What I'm really interested in is kind of your journey from when you were a young lad all the way to where you're at today teaching at BYU. We've already kind of touched on some of the jobs you had. I'm curious what got you interested into BIM, if that was even your first interest, and then how did you grow that into being educator of BIM, and like where did that passion ignite? Everyone has like that one kind of like point, that story where like it just ignites. That was a point where I knew I was going to be in BIM for life. So why don't you go ahead and tell me that story where you started?
Okay, let's think about this. You mentioned laddie when I was a laddie. I used to play the laddie golf ball when I was a golfer.
Oh, okay,
The
okay, yep,
precept
yep, yep.
laddie. Kind of a stupid side note there, but at any rate, I got kind of crazy with golf for years there. But I started getting interested in the architecture world. And in high school, I did drafting, hand drawn drafting with all the different leads and the mylar and everything.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And I enjoyed that. It's not in my family. My dad's was a business guy and real estate, and none of my family does construction. My older guy brother does a little bit. He was in the military though, but I was the only one that kind of had that interest. And then I left high school, went on a mission. I'm at BYU. Probably a lot of us go on missions, and then I came
mm-hmm,
back and wanted to be in psychology, which is because I was helping people. And so I'm like, that's a natural fit.
mm-hmm.
Went to the first semester of classes, and I'm like, this is not going to work. I need to find answers. I need to work towards the answers. And now I look back to it and think, maybe I would have made more money in the psychology world these days, currently. But at any rate, I switched out of that and went into architecture at Brigham Young University down in Provo,
Okay.
and started realizing that it's a long journey and there's not much money to be made there. And I wasn't super hip on the school thing, and I'm in the university now.
Yep.
And so I had a good friend that owned a construction company down in Arizona, and he was teaching there at BYU. And so I um, talked with him, and I'm like, this is the best of both worlds. I can work with design and build the stuff. And so I switched my major, and then I started getting into framing homes, um, custom homes, and did land surveying throughout college and just stuff like that. I never really knew there was I enjoyed the drafting side because we used AutoCAD Release 14. It's all the
Okay.
DOS version.
Yep.
You guys probably don't even remember what that was, but before the Windows version. And so um, I got into that. And then it was a few years down the road in my career, I was working at a semiconductor plant and started talking with a designer. And he started talking 3D design, how they're doing 3D
Mm-hmm.
modeling. And this was, I think, when Revit just started, early 2000s or something. And I'm like, that's kind of exciting. I like that. That's pretty neat. And so we talked more about it. And then I put it to the side and was just, became a project manager and estimator and just managed multiple types of projects. And, and then we went down to another site, and the client actually pushed this and said, we need a BIM. We need you to support our BIM program. And it's a very sophisticated client
Mm-hmm.
in the semiconductor world. And they said, our company said, we've never done it before, but we'll figure it out. And then we did self perform electrical, process pipe, mechanical, and all the clean room work. in the semiconductor world. And so we started just finding people that had experience in 3D AutoCAD. We did use Fab MEP at the time, and that's all we knew. And so we built a team. I kind of actually regretted. I actually do. I proposed a different person to actually become the BIM manager,
Okay.
because I don't know why. I was kind of stupid because I really wanted to do it. I was the senior PM, and I really wanted to take on the BIM manager role. But I said, no, this guy, he's very technologically advanced and smart. And so I still kind of oversaw a lot of it in the development, but he was more directly involved in it. And so that happened. And then I went off, moved to New York and did other projects, and then came back, was doing some work at Tesla, and as an owner's rep, and they started introducing BIM coordination there, and they used BIM 360 Glue and Revit, and they had their own internal design. So it kind of ignited the excitement again, saying, you know what, if I get another opportunity, I want to be a BIM manager and a director of VDC within a company.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't happen for about, oh gosh, about 3 years later. I was down in California in Malibu working on a project, and got an offer to go back to the company I was with before and kind of rebuild their BIM team. And so I jumped into it, and just went through the pains of it. It's super painful. If you've ever started a a full scale a full scale BIM team with modelers of all disciplines and coordination, it's pretty
Yeah.
painful. You're like
Yeah.
an IT person, a part-time IT person, and you have to understand the trades, and you got to be a good manager and communicator. It's a
I
lot
want to
into it.
I want to see that on the next job description for BIM manager or BIM director VDC. I want all the IT stuff in there. I want all the troubleshoot stuff in there. I want all the I've actually been through that exact process, and it takes about a year and a half, 2 years to
Mm-hmm.
like get it really dialed in and settled in with the right people in the right spot. So I'm sorry,
Yeah,
continue. Yeah.
no, that's you hit it right on the head. It was I didn't realize it at first. And I have an inclination to IT. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually just got my master's in IT management. And so
Oh, awesome.
and I knew there was going to be there's more of a merger going to be happening with robotics, AI, and modeling. So we have to embrace that somehow. And so when I was involved in developing the team, yeah, we went through the turnover was pretty fast because you're
Mm-hmm.
bringing people in. I know what is expected, and I'm like, this isn't working. Let's make you happier somewhere else. This
Mm-hmm.
isn't working. Let's make, and then you find a couple people, and you're like, okay, let's build around those people and start, duplicating, their
Yeah.
talents.
Making more
And
champions. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And they were good people, wonderful people to work with. And you got to find the right personality of people that want to teach and develop others. And so when you're hiring those people and building a program, the first people, boots on the ground, better be the right ones, um, because they are going to be the foundation with which you're going to grow. And it's
Mm-hmm.
going to be hard to grow other modelers from there. And that once you get a good foundation, we had a good foundation of piping modelers, electrical and CSA modelers, and they were the right people. We'd interview people that were gamers,
Mm-hmm.
and like we need detailers, we need coordinators, we need laser scanners, we need people who can process those, and then we need BIM field coordinators in the field that actually take the model and help the trades fly the model so that we keep it true. So we don't deviate, because if you just hand the model out to the field, we learn it really quick. If you just give it to them and say, hey, you're done, they're not going to follow the model.
Nope.
Something's going to happen. And so what we did is we had a whole new position called the BIM field coordinator, and most of them were journeymen. And we just taught them Navisworks. And we say, you know what is required. We'll teach you Navis. You know the 2D to 3D. Just help keep the other installers honest. Their life is going to be easier if they do. And we wanted to be known as the company that always was in models.
Mm-hmm.
When there was a dispute, if someone was going to move, we were never going to move, because we were always in for model. And that was the culture we had to put in, to all of our modelers and our detailers and guys in the field. And so and it became a good, really good team. I was pretty happy with everybody, but it was exciting to find these kids that they hear BIM and they're like, oh, that's kind of cool. And you sit them down. Have you ever done it before? No, I ran some wire in a house
Yeah.
before,
Yep.
but I know, how to work in the 3D world. And then you kind of feel the personality and you think, okay, I can put you in the field to do field coordination so you actually see it happen and
Mhm.
then bring you in as a modeler. And it worked out pretty good. And then, I think the positions I mentioned, we had detailers that we'd model, hand it off to the people producing the sheets, and then they would interact, and then we'd have the field coordinators, and they would come in, sit through the constructability reviews, then they'd take it to the field, and then we'd do laser scanning at 3 times during the modeling process, before, in the middle, and at the end, to just do our last checks to make sure that something in the field didn't really screw us over.
Yeah.
And so,
That's super nice. You had a full team. I had a lot of crossover training. Now we didn't
mhm,
have field coordinators because we were in the modular factory. We were all basically in the field. More than often, it'd be like, "Hey, did you build it to the drawings?" Or because we got to the point where we were dimensioning every stud,
mhm,
because studs would be off, and if a stud is off, then the wall don't fit, then the drywall don't work, and then it just keeps tumbling down line, right? So we'd get in there and, hey, your drywall doesn't have a backing. Okay, well, let's look at the wall and how it was built. Okay, well, we're missing a stud, so let's go put that in there.
mhm,
And just like you're talking about, unless you have a field coordinator doing that stuff, it's just another set of plans that someone has to read that they're not going to read.
mhm.
That's what
Yeah,
it is on site. No, that's awesome. And so, how did you go from that setting up your dream team BIM team to teaching at BYU?
well, it wasn't planned at all. I had a really I it was pretty exciting. I enjoyed doing that. It was painful at first.
Mm-hmm.
To go back a little bit, the first 6 months I was getting yelled at every day. When are you going to get your models done on time? When are they going to be accurate? And I had to tell the owners, I'm like, it'll get there. We're almost there. When? And they kept on saying when, and I was working. Just be prepared if you are starting a BIM team like that, you're going to be working 12 to 14-hour days
Yeah,
if
prepare.
you really care to do
Yep,
it right.
yep.
And once you get it right and get the right people, like Jim Collins is, get the right people on the bus and the right seats on the bus. Once you get that put together, then your life becomes a lot less stressful.
Mm-hmm.
You have your flow, your systems, and everybody knows their job and they're excited about it and you're recognizing them. So it was a tough journey, but once we got to that point, I'm like, this is great. I want to stay here forever, and I want to develop it throughout the entire company in all the different regions. And that was actually the plan. And then all of a sudden, BYU Idaho, a person I met 20 years earlier who hired me out of college, reached out to me and said, "Hey, Kirk, we're starting a VDC degree at BYU Idaho, the first one in the country."
Mm-hmm.
And And he says, I thought about you because we've stayed in touch. But he says, oh, Kirk's not a BIM guy. He's a project manager. He didn't know I had been doing this for the
Mm-hmm.
last few years. And so he looked up my LinkedIn profile. He said, oh, he's a BIM manager. So he gave me a call. And we just started talking about things. And he says, hey, if you're interested, we want to develop this. And we need someone that actually has been working in the field and developed teams to help us understand the holistic view of a
Mm-hmm.
BIM program. We have on staff architects here that work in our department and the different levels of BDC experts. So that's kind of how it started. And it was a hard decision to make because I was happy where I was, getting paid really well. Um, and my family had just moved to Arizona a few years earlier, and we were going to stay and retire there. As we say in our world here at BYU, is God had other plans for me, and so
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, we'll work it out that way. And so I pondered about it, thought about it, and talked with my wife, and I just felt like I'm just gonna apply and see what happens. And so I did, and I was happy if I didn't get the job and as a full time faculty, or if I did, I was happy either way.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like something that I was going to be disappointed either way. And so I felt like if I got it, it was the right thing to happen in my life. If I didn't, then it wasn't the right time. So
Right.
that's kind of how I got into it here. And since I started, it was like a 9 month process of interviews. I couldn't believe how many people I had to talk with at the university. And then right when I got hired, COVID hit.
Oh boy.
And so all this in class stuff in person had to go remote. And so I'm like, I've never taught in the university level, and I have the curriculum and what we're going to look in. I have to develop more of the curriculum, but now I have to do this remotely, over Zoom, as everybody had to adapt. It
Yep.
was awful. And so but it was ultimately a good experience. Kind of learned a lot. The students were great. That's one thing we have here is I don't know, the students. Most of them just want to work, want to
Hmm.
learn. They're excited to learn, and they're fairly forgiving of my inadequacies, and so it was good that way. So that's kind of how it started.
Well, you had quite a journey, Kirk. I mean, it's exciting to hear that you came from the industry, working in the field, to working behind the computer, to now teaching it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, the fact that you got chosen for the position that you're at right now is probably the most perfect position for someone like you to teach the next generation. There's a lot of, I'm talking trades again, getting into the trades. There's not a lot of people going in there. No one wants to get dirty. No one wants to go be a plumber.
Mm-hmm.
And so that older generation is going to retire before that new generation comes in. And there's no one teaching the younger generation how to plumb, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Too
I,
bad.
it is. And I have a question for you. As an
Mm-hmm.
educator, how do you teach your students construction? There's BIM, there's processes. Do you guys go through like a construction course, as far as like, obviously you're spending time in the field, which is great, but how do you teach them construction?
Well, we teach them first and foremost construction. VDC is an addition.
Mm-hmm.
It's the
Mm-hmm.
technology side of construction. And we could get rid of D, just kind of throw D out there, because we're not really designers in reality.
Right.
We're virtual construction people. And so I would, and we've disputed that at our university, because we get a lot of people that start in our degree and they think, well, I'm going to be a designer. Well, most of you aren't. You're not going to design. You're not going to be architects. You can go that direction, but
Right.
most of you, they want people that can model, take the 2D, convert it to 3D, and make it constructible and create a plan ahead of time. So all of our classes, if you're a VDC major, you'll take about 60% of the construction management classes that we have, and there are others will be more of a technology emphasis around the equipment we're going to use, the software in Revit, creating families, doing 3D printing, doing we do some hand sketches and stuff too because it's useful. So they'll get, and they do some programming classes as well
Oh,
because
okay.
coding isn't it's part of like all the
Mm-hmm.
scripting inside any of the software, and so they got to understand that, and getting into the 40 stuff as well, and so we just I don't know. I think our department, we have over almost 1,000 construction management VDC students, and I think all the professors focus on and come from a building background,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's what we push. And so I don't know if it's a challenge. I think the biggest challenge I get from my students is people that come in thinking they're going to be designers and they're not. And
Mm,
we just have to tell them, hey, it's a possibility. Very few of you are going to go work for architecture firms and be designers. A lot of you're going to be coordinators. If you go work for the trades, and I encourage this, I said, if you want to be a good modeler, go work for a piping, electrical, and mechanical company, or even masonry or any of those structural steel. My son's doing
mm-hmm.
structural steel modeling for a company now, and so get into those worlds, and you're just going to be a way better manager of the whole process. And so that's what you just have to repeat it over and over again, and just say we're not drawing for fun.
Mm-hmm.
We're drawing to actually build something,
Yep.
and so we just push that a lot in all of our classes.
I think that's incredible what you're doing over there, because that was something that, if you want to be a designer in construction, you got to go for engineering, you got to go to architecture. And I say that because as modelers, as coordinators, as, managers, BIM managers, right? We get these design models, and then we have to take it that step further and take it into production. So
Right.
I'm extremely happy you're basically putting architecture, engineer, and BIM side by side because that
Uh-huh.
is required. And we've developed so much from drafting. It used to be drafting, associate degree, draw by hand. It wasn't like as technical as it is today. And that was
Mhm.
designing, right? Engineers, architects were all drafters, and then there was just drafters that would just do kind of like details and things like that. And then it got into, okay, now we're going to work in 3D. Okay, now we're going to build it to what it has to be constructible. Okay, now there's
Mhm.
this specialized element and this specialized element and this specialized element. Okay, now steel structures getting into it. Now we're getting prefab. Now we're getting modular. And I think that the BIM opportunity, when you leave college, you graduate and you have a majors in is it BIM? What's the major called?
Yeah, it's called VDC.
Okay, awesome. So you get a major in VDC, you graduate, right? You have you can go anywhere in the construction industry, architecture firm, engineering firm,
Hmm.
or any contractor because everyone's using it now,
Yeah,
right?
you're right.
If you're an
Uh-huh.
architect or engineer, you're looking for an architecture firm, engineering firm. So your job opportunity is not as much. Everyone's hiring BIM right now, so like it's not
Yeah.
that that crazy of an idea, but the opportunities for BIM is massive. There's so much job opportunity out there for people that know what they're doing,
Hmm.
and finding those people like you talked about. When you were building your team, you had to find those certain people to find a base from. And it sounds like
Hmm.
the students that are coming out of your program are sitting in that base, which is great. So if
Yeah,
any,
they're all they're all like some of the companies that come to our college or the university here, and here we have a VDC program, but they don't know how in depth we get.
mm-hmm,
Most VDC classes like program, well, they don't even have programs. Most construction management, they have a couple BIM classes,
mm-hmm,
and it's all kind of high level management. But when they start learning, we're modeling, we're creating families, we're working in all the different parameter types, we're working in all the different work planes, and you can create parametric families and other types of families, and then we're extracting data out of the models, doing estimates, quantity takeoffs, and then we're doing 3D printing and drone work and laser scanning and all that stuff. And he's like, they don't realize how in depth we're getting, and we need to go further. Honestly, we just
mm-hmm.
don't. There's not enough credits, in my opinion, to teach everything that we need to, and so we have to get them down the right path. But it's we have companies. I think 3 times a year we have 35 to 45 companies come to our university recruiting our students just in construction and design and VDC. And so and they're like, and every company is bringing their VDC director to
Yep.
hire. And it's even evolving into the residential world right now, because prefabrication, the high end custom, they're getting into that now, and so it's getting pretty exciting for our students. And yeah, most of them they're going to be the go to people with these companies. They're going to get hired. And I tell our students, a lot of you who have good problem solving skills are very driven. You will be the companies coming to you. They're saying, hey, a client asked us to do this. We don't know how to do it. Who has kind of some BIM experience? Well, you're going to be the one starting that program. You're going to be developing it. And the students really don't understand how many opportunities they will have leaving this program. But they're starting to see it a little bit more.
Right. And it's massive that you said that you have to have the drive and the passion. When you graduate and you go out into the world and you go to your job and you have drive and passion, that
Mm-hmm.
really shows. Like there are people that are in BIM and they are worker bees, which is great.
Yeah.
We need
And you need
worker
those.
bees. You need
Yeah.
worker bees. And there are
Mm-hmm.
people that are stand out and they're leaders. And that passion in leaders, you stand out, you get noticed, you get opportunities, you develop programs.
Mm-hmm.
If development, which I love that you teach development, I am personally um, not in development, and I don't I don't want to learn it, but I need to learn it. Coding, as far as coding goes, but
Mm-hmm.
the fact that you teach that is amazing because coding is a fundamental part now of
Yeah.
BIM, making Dynamo scripts in Revit, creating um, scripts for AutoCAD. I'm sure there's plenty of other softwares out there, and I don't know how many softwares you guys touch on in your program, but you know, um, you guys are purely construction, so you're probably teaching like CAD and Revit, um, probably not Archiviz or any of that stuff, right?
Well, we teach Revit mainly.
Mm-hmm.
That's the primary core software. We do AutoCAD. as well. We have Navisworks, Revisto, Twinmotion. We have a new 4D animation software we're using. Can't remember what it is. You know, Recap.
Hmm.
Anything with reality capture side we're doing. Um, what are some other
Okay.
for renderings, good
Hmm.
renderings, and so we get into that, and we're always looking for new opportunities. I'm looking for to get my models to an LOD 400 and above. I am looking. We started talking with Evolve,
Okay.
um, and they have Evolve pipe as well, and mechanical and electrical, and so kind of maybe working. Maybe I shouldn't have put a plug in there for them, but at any rate, we get a lot of companies that reach out to us because they want us to. Yeah, if they can get their software and add-ons out there, then the
Hmm.
students leave with that experience, and it just makes it better for them. And
Hmm.
so, um, Revisto's been very helpful recently, and it's a we're gonna pilot that in my construction BIM class this semester again for the second time, and we're I don't know how much detail I should get into there, but we have a class where I get into we teach them MEP modeling, and then we say, okay, we're going to divide up into the last 5 weeks of the class, and we're going to do a project from scratch. Here's your structural CSA models, your structural and architectural models. Now let's go ahead and route. Here's 2D drawings. You guys have to route everything in 3D and coordinate everything and make it clash free. And I give them milestones that they work towards. But we're using that in Revisto. We've done Navis in the past. We're going to use Revisto so that it's more of a live cloud based coordination effort for them. So it's pretty exciting in that world. And there'll be new software coming out too.
That's incredible. And I'm assuming you guys are going to adapt with all the new software. Not now, when I say new software, and this may be an unpopular belief, but AutoCAD, Revit, they're right now big names, big boss, right? Um, just like AutoCAD, Revit's not going to be around forever, right? There's going to be a
Mm-hmm.
shift and some change. I'm assuming you guys are going to work with that shift, correct? Or will you just be
Yeah,
teaching
that's
Revit? Yeah.
yeah, and that's one thing they encourage us at this university here, not just in our department, but all of them is they want us to stay current in our disciplines. They don't want us to become just academics, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And our department's even more not to just become academics. We they want us to stay engaged in industry with professionals, and so every 5 years we do sabbaticals and go work in the industry
Mm-hmm.
for about a whole semester. And then I always just personally just stay engaged with companies all the time. Say, what's going on? What are you guys doing? What's new technology? And every week I'm interacting with companies outside of the university, and so we're getting. And then we take that to the rest of our department and say, hey, have you heard of this? You heard of that? And they're all doing the same thing. And so, and we have to be selective as far as what we choose because it would be a never ending change of curriculum
Mm-hmm.
and work
Right.
plans. And it's, yeah, most of them do the same thing, have a little other bells and whistles, but you teach the processes. One software versus the other one, they probably do the same thing. And we just make a selection of what software to really use. If there's a real industry disruptor,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to look at that a little bit more deep and then decide, hey, do we want to go down that path?
Well, if there's any other college professors or anyone listening out here and you want to develop a program of yours, here is the blueprint. Get in touch with Kirk and talk to him. It's so great that it's becoming more of a forefront industry because I can't tell you how many people I talked to that fall into it. You fell into it, like it was just an
Mm-hmm.
opportunity that came to you and you're just like, yeah, sure, I'll draw. And that sounds like fun. And so many people just fall into it, and
Uh-huh.
it's one of those things that why don't people look for it? Because it's there
Yeah.
and it's incredible
Uh-huh.
industry to be a part of, especially not only with the gamification going on with the VR and the AR and the modeling in 3D, but also the education you get along with the when you're working through your job, like on job training. There's
Mm-hmm.
so much stuff there that you learn and understand and can play with, and then all of a sudden you have the opportunity to develop the processes
Yeah.
and workflows and stuff. I think it's absolutely incredible. Well,
Yeah. It's
Kirk, I
super
got a
exciting.
question for you.
Yeah.
So, if I'm a high school student And what attributes do you see mostly coming through into BIM that you see very successful people? So if I'm a high school student, I don't know what I would do in my life. What are some attributes that BIM people have that you'd be looking for to join the program?
Okay. Interesting you say that because I'm going to a high school tomorrow
Okay,
to actually promote the degree.
there you go.
They're just down the street. I don't know. I would be looking for, regardless of what role you want to play in BIM, I think they need to have a desire for it to be creative, whether it's in the arts or technology side of thing. To first have that excitement of the technology that's coming forward
Mm-hmm.
in the future. The next thing is someone that's, I guess you don't think they need to communicate well, but I think you have to have someone that has a drive to learn and to not be spoon fed everything. Now, there's some positions that you can be a creating sheets, and that's super easy. Anybody can learn that, in my opinion. But you have to have a hunger to actually kind of learn,
Mm-hmm.
because things are changing so fast. And I would look for that in the high school students and say, hey, find if they get excited when you start talking about the VR world, or maybe they start talking about, hey, I heard that we can build a space center somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
and we can do it in 3D and operate it remotely. I'm like, well, those are the kind of minds that you want to start getting in to this, because they will help us solve the digital twin problem.
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, it does have it's a challenge, but they will come up with ideas that we just can't think of right now. But they have to have that excitement and um, and just be willing to work, and show
Mm-hmm.
up.
Mm-hmm.
It's we and I okay, I sorry, you may get me down this
Let's
rat hole
go.
here,
Let's go.
but okay, I'm all for limited remote work. Okay, it
Okay.
works in some cases, but I tell our students, I say, if you're graduating thinking that you're going to be remote all your life, you may be. But what you're doing in construction, you're going to limit your opportunities for growth if you do that. You'll never be able to understand construction until you're there. And you have to understand construction as it's happening to be able to take it to the virtual world and be productive that way. And I tell the students, I say, you may just like to be a drafter, creating sheets, but you're going to limit your growth or opportunities in the future, your ability to make an impact
Mm-hmm.
on the construction world.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the virtual world, you just won't be sought after as much. And so those are the kind of, don't want kids that just want to stay home and get paid a ton of money to do half the work. Um, and yet everybody wants that, of course. But the thing is you got to add value to the people actually paying you. And so you don't want students that are people that have that mindset that they want to go to internships. The best students that I have in class, or if I'm in high school, I'll say, how do you feel about going onto a job site and working in the field and learning how construction happens? And if they go, I'm good with that, I'd love doing that. And I have a technology desire, inclination there. Those are the
Mm-hmm.
kind of people you can, I think, make good, really good VDC professionals, and are going to change things. Same thing in my students in class. I tell them that your first internship should be in the field, swinging a hammer, turning a wrench, doing something in the field. Um, Stay away from the office at first. Get to the field, and then you'll evolve in later internships.
It
And
all
we
starts in the field of field experience. I agree.
yeah, exactly. And that's what we required, two full-time internships to graduate in our degree,
Oh wow.
both
Yeah.
VDC and CM. It's not just one, but they have to have two full-time internships to graduate. And so that's, we just felt like that was important.
That's
So,
great. That's great. Well, Kirk, I appreciate you coming on today. And I love the BYU program that you developed and worked on, and you're helping develop and grow more. Um, if you guys listening like what you're listening to today, please feel free to subscribe, follow, and like. Kirk, I hope to talk to you again, and maybe have you on a podcast later on. We'll talk about some changing generational stuff happening with students as they're coming through the program.
yeah, be excited too again.
All right.
Sounds good,
Thanks, Kirk.
Alex.
Appreciate it.
Okay.